Welcome to the Open Heritage Adaptive Reuse Training Program. Today's session will be looking into territorial impact. Open Heritage is a project funded by the Horizon 2020 program and focuses into looking into new governance and financial models for adaptive heritage reuse. So today we will be looking into what are the territorial impacts that these projects may have when developing a community-based project. We would like to take you over to Portugal and especially into its capital, Lisbon. And we will be looking into the case of the Largo Residencias. Now, this was originally built as a ceramic factory. And before the initiative started, it used to be an illegal pension and brothel hostel, but today it has become a hostel, hotel, and residence and artist and cafe within the Intendente neighborhood. It was run, and we unfortunately have to use the past because of what happened due to the COVID-19, but we will look into this in a moment. It was run by a cooperative that used its revenue coming from tourism and the cafe towards employing people from the neighborhood, coming from vulnerable groups and activating also cultural activities. This was created in a network with local organizations which had the ambition of regenerating what used to be a very rundown neighborhood of Intendente. However, because of the centrality of the building and the neighborhood itself, which is very close to the city center, in a moment of hype of tourism due to a number of factors, among which the increase of low-cost airlines that were making it possible for people to reach the city of Lisbon at a low cost. The number of tourists also created initially the possibility for Largo to access a number of tourists in their hostel and in their local and cultural activities. But what happened on the long term is what would be more generally defined as gentrification of the Intendente neighborhood, as well as large part of the city of Lisbon, and which has meant basically for the economic pressure being too hard on the private ownership, on the community that was making use of this private owned building. Now let's look a little bit into the history and the timeline of this building that you see here. Beautiful building covered in fantastic ceramics, typical from Portugal and Lisbon in particular. Now, in 1850, the building was constructed and from the Lamingo family, and it was only in 2011 that the Largo Residencias, the cooperative, took over the building, and the renovation started. Now, it was gradually renovated, as we see many of these heritage projects developed by local communities are carried out in phases, first and foremost because of access to resources not being available all at once at the beginning, which meant that the residence started, so in the very top floor, then the cafe opened at the very bottom floor, and in between was the hostel. But it was only in 2017 when the rise of the prices in the city of Lisbon really started increasing, that there started being a real conflict with the landowner. But it was more or less the same period, because it was the year after, when Largo breaks even and pays back all the cooperative members' loans. And this was also a time when the municipality started realizing that there was a very strong tourism pressure. And this is why in 2019, the municipality set up a new regulation to limit the number of new facilities that would be working in historical areas, giving obviously an advantage to the Largo Residencias to some extent. But it was in 2021, so within the pandemic years, that on top of the conflict that was already taking place with the landowner, the rental contract, it expires. And there was no possibility of renewing it because the landowner had interest in selling its property. This had already been a discussion going on back from 2017, but this was the moment on top of the pandemic, which obviously gave a huge pressure to a cooperative enterprise that was working with marginalized people from the neighborhood, therefore within the social realm, to be able to be, so we may say, competitive in, on the one hand, the rise of prices, and on the other hand, obviously, the shutting down of many of the activities due to the pandemic. Within this context, what we can say now is that the activities have all stopped in 2022, and currently the organization is discussing with the municipality the possibility of taking part of its activities in other locations, but this is still currently under discussion. So what actually was the impact that Largo Residency has had? And here you see the pictures of the square full of people and full of activities. Now, this was an extremely deprived neighborhood, and it was thanks to the activities of the cooperative that are made of artists, architects, and social entrepreneurs, that it was possible to reactivate this neighborhood, or at least this part of the neighborhood. Yet the impacts on the larger scale impacts of this, not only the intervention of Largo, but of the regeneration of the neighborhood itself, were to some extent, we could also say, the cause for its success, but also its failure, as unfortunately today, as we said, it has closed down. What definitely was created were a variety of services in the neighborhood from its commercial activities that also had a very, very strong social and cultural impact, because a lot of cultural events and festivals were created for free. Furthermore, there was an increase in the safety in the neighborhood, not only in terms of perception when walking in the public space, maybe at night, but also in the possibility of having a series of additional integrative welfare services, for instance, complimentary meals for those in need, and overall support to the community. In fact, of the cooperative, approximately 80, nearly 90% of the cooperative employees are actually residents of the neighborhood, which means obviously that this is creating a local economy and having a very strong local impact in terms also of local development. So overall, what we could say is that Largo has been doing a very strong work in terms of advocacy, also working very closely with the local government, both at the district, Praxia, but also at the municipal level. And we could also say, to some extent, a little bit also at national level, as at the time after the economic crisis, when the just resigned Prime Minister Alberto Costa was the new mayor of Lisbon, this was the time when actually he opened up the new offices of the city council in the square of Intendente as a political sign for the municipality to be intervening in more priority neighborhoods. And it was just next door to the Largo Residencias, creating a very strong bondage also with the political level, to which we will see also in the next years what the impacts will be on the longer term. So looking into this, what we see that we can definitely discuss further is the fact that when we look into what have been the strengths and the weaknesses of this entire experience, we can definitely say that there has been, obviously, as a strength, the possibility of developing a financial, sustainable, grassroots cooperative, which has been operating in the neighborhood, creating also employment for the local inhabitants and so on. And we can also see that it has also created the opportunity of also learning new ways of creating also financial means in the neighborhood. Yet at the same time, we see as a weakness definitely the fact that Largo, to some extent, has been contributing to the gentrification of the neighborhood, despite it being absolutely the last thing it had on its plans. And the fact that we can also see that, unfortunately, the ending of this experience, also due to the pandemic, is also part of the weaknesses that were embedded within a more social enterprise that was working in a private ownership, Had it been in a public ownership, we could have definitely discussed about different possibilities. Obviously, there is an important role that is played by the public policy in relation to, for example, in contrast with private ownership. And there is also a very strong role that is also to be discussed when we're talking about territorial impact, especially we could say on a neighborhood scale, when we have these very valuable social initiatives that are often precursors of change in the neighborhood, how can there be a way of bringing forward the change in a positive way? And by positive, we mean enduring a positive social impact, inclusion, no displacement of housing, and this is basically no gentrification. We see that unfortunately these cannot be only left to the very valuable work that is carried out by the local initiatives themselves, but this needs to be carried out in partnership with all the stakeholders, most likely with a provision of the direction given by a community network on the one hand and the public ownership, the public policy on the other. And this is definitely something that we need to reestablish as a topic of political commitment towards positive territorial impact when we're talking about regeneration of heritage and neighborhoods at large. If you found the experience of the Largo valuable, interesting, and you would like to know more, also hearing directly the voices of the stakeholders that carried out the project, we invite you to watch the video from the Open Heritage Project, where you will be able to get more into knowledge. And if you would like to read more about the policies, the timeline, and so on, we invite you to read the report, and you find all the information and the links just below this video. Thank you very much on behalf of Utopian and all the Open Heritage Network and team. We really thank you for taking the time of following these trainings with us, and we hope to know more about also the projects that you're carrying out yourselves. Thank you. Goodbye.